Yeah, I was thinking that. There we go. It's a little. All right, welcome. I call this meeting to order, the meeting of the Kaysville City Planning Commission, December 11th, 2025. Declaration of conflict of interest with any commissioners. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item number 3, public hearing on amending the 2022 general plan to include water use and preservation required by Utah State Code 102404, general plan preparation.
All right, I'm going to start this off, and we're going to tag team a couple things tonight with our Public Works Director, Josh Belknap, who's here, and then our consultants, Christine Richmond and Liz Jackson.
Is this a public hearing?
Yes. There will be a public hearing portion, yes.
Yes, we will have the public hearing. Okay, so we are here tonight discussing an amendment to the 2022 general plan. The project background is that a couple years back, the state legislature passed Senate Bill 110 that required cities to adopt into their general plan a water use and preservation, water conservation element. They did that in kind of some staggered terms, but essentially the city of our size is required to have this adopted by the end of the year. So that is our goal. And the purpose of this is just to ensure that land use decisions are tied to water availability so that we don't overdevelop our water, so that we ensure that if there is any development or redevelopment that happens within the city, that there's enough water for culinary uses and as well as outdoor uses. So in the end, when this is adopted, we should have some better tools to look at that when we do process applications for development. The state code requires that we look at several things, but we need to evaluate how development patterns influence water demand. So an example of that is that commercial uses tend to use less water overall than residential. Primarily residential has, we have large lots with outdoor water needs, and then you have the indoor use. That's not entirely true. Sometimes commercial uses or light industrial may use more water, but we need to kind of understand those patterns and how that impacts the water that we have. They want us to look at ways to reduce water use in existing development and also in new development. And they also have tasked us with looking at how city operations can conserve water. And then they have required us to coordinate with water providers. So in Kaysville, we essentially have, I would say, 5 water providers. We have 3 secondary water. We distribute Weber Basin water, but they are within our community as well. So Kaysville City does not produce any water. We just wholesale water. We purchase that from Weber Basin and distribute that. So we did have several entities to coordinate with through this process. So the state code was recently recodified. So this chapter is now found in 10-2 or 20-404. And again, the requirements in that were that the water element gets included into the general plan, that we analyze how development affects water demand and our infrastructure. They asked us, or the laws ask us to identify strategies to reduce per capita water use in both existing and then future water development or future development. They have required us to look at recommending changes to government operations and then, again, consulting with water providers. We've also had to coordinate with the Division of Water Resources, the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and then the secondary irrigation companies. And it also requires us to plan at least 20 years out into the future, and there's a requirement to review this every 5 years. So what this looks like is, this is our future land use map. We will be adding a new chapter into the general plan, and we'll integrate water data that we've reviewed over the last few months that we can, and we've created some tools that we can use to look at how that future land use how those decisions may impact the water needs, the water availability. There will be some goals and objectives that are included in the general plan element, and then this also provides a framework for monitoring and updating data. So with that, I want to turn the time over here to Josh Belknap, our Public Works Director. I included in the packet, the city also is required to, because we're a water distributor, we're required to provide a water conservation plan specific to our water system. And much gratitude to Mr. Belknap for the work that he's done on this. The timing was, I think, really good in this instance, that he was able to, with this bill in mind and these new requirements, to kind of craft a water conservation plan to easily translate from the purposes with the water distribution system and then into our general plan. So I'll turn the time over to him.
Yeah. Excuse me. Thank you. I just wanted to give some of the details about water usage and the water system in Kaysville City. As was mentioned previously, there's multiple water providers in Kaysville, and I'd largely break those into two categories. Kaysville City is the provider of drinking water for the entire boundary of Kaysville, and then in terms of irrigation, we have three main providers: Hates Creek, Benchland, and Davis and Weber. So we're largely talking about, when we talk about Kaysville, when we talk about city operations, we're talking about drinking water. As Melinda mentioned, we recently drafted and are in the process of adopting with council the 2025 update to the water conservation plan for Kaysville City. It's been a process that's also in conjunction with this general plan element. But this is also a state requirement that you, number one, have a plan, and that plan be updated every 5 years. Next slide. Okay, no worries. As kind of a rule of thumb, you can largely classify with the drinking water usage and the irrigation usage, not just in Kaysville, but along the Wasatch Front. You can estimate that about 80% of the water that a typical home would use along the Wasatch Front being irrigation. So outdoor usage, landscaping, the remainder, the 20%, is what's being used in a home. That's your kitchen sink, your bathrooms, washing clothes. All that ends up going to a sewer district here in Kaysville, and it's that 20% that we largely focus on because that's what we operate, that's what we control. In Kaysville, we're further unique in that a lot of cities either operate their own irrigation systems, which, as I mentioned, we do not. And then there are a lot of communities that allow residents to utilize drinking water to keep their landscaping alive, to irrigate with that drinking water. 94% of the properties in Kaysville have access to both irrigation and drinking water, and that's a nice luxury to have. We don't have as much strain on our drinking water system, but that's very much an intentional thing that the city has made decisions over the last 40 to 50 years to try and separate that usage. Next slide. So as we talk about usage, one of the terms that you'll hear and see frequently is a term called ERC. It stands for Equivalent Residential Connections, and it's a way that we can compare what a typical property would use compared to a home. So one home, whether you're a large family, small family, we're going to consider you one equivalent residential connection. As you look at like a restaurant who's using a lot of water, they could be as high as 10 equivalent residential connections, 10 ERCs. You could have a cell phone store. They're not going to have much water usage. They're going to be less than one ERC. So as you look at the information in this table here, we talk about our water usage. We get that water, as Melinda stated, all from Weber Basin. We have a contract, a total of about 2,700 acre feet available from Weber Basin. In addition to that 2,700, we have an additional on average 400 acre feet a year that we can further access by saying, okay, we used 2,700 acre feet this year. We also took some spring water that we have rights to, and we diverted that to Weber Basin so that they could use that in some of their other treatment processes and irrigation services. Weber Basin comes back to us and said, okay, we're only going to consider in your billing that you used 2,300 acre feet. We're going to credit off that 400. So in effect, it gives us an effective contract of 3,100 acre feet. Typically, here within the last 3 or 4 years, we've been using about 2,400 acre feet. So we have 300 acre feet available until we start reaching that contract amount. But again, that doesn't factor in that 400 acre foot cushion.
Jock?
Yes, please.
So, I mean, we don't have that much land left to develop in Kaysville. So is that, are your totals for future need based on that, on potential future growth? And I mean, as I understand, we probably only have a couple hundred acres left, right, to develop in the city?
Yeah, it's far from an exact science. You're definitely going to have to be making some assumptions. What we're looking at are what are the current zoning for properties. As you look at the general plan, what is the future zoning potential for those properties? Maybe that zoning changes. So we are looking at existing patterns. What are the current number of ERCs that we have, and we utilize that to establish a usage per ERC, and then we take that with projected future populations. Yeah. And currently we're about 10,000 ERCs, a little bit north of 10,000. We're projecting that by 2060 we're maybe 14,500 ERCs. So yeah, there is some consideration for development potential. I think we're largely approaching that point of build out, as you pointed out.
Yeah. I just wonder if that's, I mean, from going from 10,000 to 14,000, 40% increase. Mm-hmm. But I don't think our population is going to grow by 40%.
And its potential, we certainly want to plan more on the conservative side of things.
Yep.
It's very possible that, as we've done some of the other calculations, being a little bit more liberal in the planning reduces that number by, I think, 1,400 ERCs potentially. But just trying to account for, we have a limited number of developable properties. Also trying to take into account as infill development takes place, redevelopment, things like that. So, yeah.
No data centers.
Great. Yeah, right. Yeah, hopefully not.
Or nuclear plants.
Yeah, exactly. As we talk about approaching that contract amount, we are currently, even though we have that 400 acre foot cushion, we don't ever want to find ourselves in a situation where we're having to stop development. I think there's been discussions about some communities on the Wasatch Back who have run into issues with that. We don't want to find ourselves in that situation. The city currently owns a number of underground water rights. We're currently working on approval from the state for additional underground water rights, and our intent with that is being able to supplement our contracts with Weber Basin with potential future underground water supply, installing wells throughout town that will never get to the point where they're our sole source or our primary source even, but just able to supplement a little bit to give us a little bit of extra cushion. So we anticipate having more than enough as we approach 2050 and beyond 2060 between Weber Basin and those additional water rights.
Has the city ever used wells for their water?
Yeah, up until the 1960s, the city relied largely on a couple of wells on the east side, as well as even prior to that, historically taking spring water, which they would run through some artificial and natural media to help with filtration and treatment, and then distribute throughout town that way. So if you This is kind of getting off into the weeds, but if you hike up through the Wilderness Park, through the Holmes Creek area, if you're hiking right through the creek, you can see several locations where there's old wooden pipes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Wrapped in wire that are sticking out towards the creek, and that was part of the old distribution system, so really kind of a neat.
What's happened to those wells and springs? Are they still there? Or?
So they've been capped previously. I think a lot of the casings are still in place, but not accessible since being capped. So we've identified 5 different locations with the state where we think, you know, these are places where we would like to focus in future exploratory efforts to look at wells. So next slide. So yeah, we have been looking at, as the general plan has required, out 20 plus years, going beyond that a little bit, going into 2060. We want to plan currently for what future demand could be. We want to be ready for whatever future development looks like. And I think a big part of that is infrastructure. You know, streets are important, having the capacity with streets, but there's other things to consider, and water is a huge part of that. And I think it's a good opportunity to strengthen the coordination efforts between the different water providers, and even, you know, the sewer district is not a water provider, but they're the receiver of all of our indoor water at some point. So that coordination is incredibly important, and I think that this plays into that. So. Okay. As discussed, the 3 different companies, as you can see here, broken out percentages. The majority of Kaysville is served by the Davis and Weber Canal Company. Then Hates Creek, which also serves almost the entirety of Fruit Heights. And Benchland Irrigation is the smallest portion of Kaysville. Benchland largely serves Farmington, but there is a portion of Kaysville that is served by Benchland. So those are those irrigation providers that we mentioned previously. Irrigation providers within the last 3 or 4 years have been largely focused on installing meters on their connections so that they can track the usage, and eventually, by state mandate, by 2030, they're required to not just have meters on all of their connections, but to start charging their users for the use. Right now, largely with irrigation, users are paying for, you know, I have a share of irrigation water and I've got to pay my allotments for the year, but whether I use 1 gallon or whether I use 1 million gallons of water, I'm paying the same thing. And obviously the share doesn't entitle you to unlimited water, but I think there's little thought given to usage currently, and I think it's an opportunity for people to have access to that usage data. As we've had a chance to talk to some residents, especially on the east side, about their usage. We do have a small number of homes where irrigation systems haven't been available. They're not capable of serving some properties on the far east side. So they do use drinking water, and that requires some extra protections to be in place and a lot of close coordination there. Homes in Kaysville, their drinking water, they're typically using maybe 5,000 to 6,000 gallons a month. And homes on the east side, as we were talking with residents, you're using, some of them around 30,000 gallons a month, which was more typical. And some of these homes, not really knowing, am I overwatering? Am I watering enough? With their irrigation using over 150,000 gallons in a single month, resulting in a water bill of over $700. So it's not just an impact that we're trying to decrease on the system, but that's a big hit on people's pocketbooks that they otherwise don't need to be faced with or dealing with. We're grateful for the good relationships that we have with these irrigation providers and for this opportunity. So,
Josh, if I can just add, one of the challenges that we had with this project is that we just don't have good data specifically with those secondary irrigation services. We have great data for our culinary water, but I just wanted to point out with this map that you can see that Benchland, Hates Creek, Davis Weber all serve outside of Kaysville city boundaries. So it was even difficult for us to take a look at the master meter, or the master amount of water that these irrigation providers send out to the community, and then trying to apply that to Kaysville specific within those boundaries. So it has been a challenge for us with that lack of data to try and really craft something that would be super accurate and meaningful with the general plan. So we've had to work around that just a little bit. But as Josh mentioned, those water providers will have to start metering that in 2030. And so we would anticipate then probably, 2032, we would have a couple years worth of data that then we can go back and revise these numbers and probably put some more meaningful information in the general plan. But just where we're at this moment in time, that data is not available. And that's been a challenge that we've had to kind of navigate around.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. I think the state, their intent with this is largely on the irrigation usage. Communities outside of Kaysville, and us included, we certainly want to encourage conservation with our indoor usage. However, the main concern is that outdoor usage. You hear a lot, we live in a desert, and we need to be responsible with our landscaping and watering. And I think that's what these efforts are largely focused on, is let's be more efficient, let's be better stewards with those resources as it pertains to outside watering. So that is difficult where the data isn't largely available, and in addition to that, the data that is available, there's no way to differentiate what community the data applies to. So, yeah.
One quick question. So when we talked about the Weber State or the Weber Basin water and that contract for the 2,700 acre feet, do those contracts get renegotiated often? Is there any guess as to what the future, will there be pressure to reduce that, or?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. Especially our primary contract has no sunset clause in it. It's here is what you were allotted. I think newer contracts have more stringent restrictions in them, especially as it pertains to, hey, in case of a shortage, here is what you're going to be faced with. Our contract predates really a lot of thought and discussion on water conservation. However, 2022, significant drought year. The state, the governor are all pushing. We've got to be careful with what we have. We don't know what the water year is going to look like next year. 2023, we have a great water year, and we're fortunate for that. However, 2022, Weber Basin is asking everybody, we need you to reduce your usage. So I think most communities were being asked to reduce their usage by 20%. And that was between your irrigation and your indoor usage, we need you to reduce by 20%. Weber Basin, as they looked at us, they said, hey, you guys are in a little bit different situation. We would love for you guys to reduce your usage by 10%, which with community help and support, we were able to do that. I think everybody was trying to be more mindful. So yeah, there's not necessarily a strong arm mechanism, but we're stakeholders. We're interested in the viability of the region, not just in Kaysville. So in those types of situations, there would be very close coordination with Weber Basin. What do city operations need to do differently? And as we communicate with our community and our residents, what needs to be done differently with them. So,
okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'll turn it over to Liz.
Thanks, Josh. Hi, Planning Commissioners. Thank you so much for having us. Liz Jackson with GSBS Consulting. I will say I'm going to go over the goals, policies, and recommendations as you have listed in your chapter, the draft chapters in front of you. It's been nice considering that the 2025 plan lays out so much of this. There's a select number that are, it's predominantly those that are within there already, except just a couple of tweaks, and some of them we've highlighted. And so to basically respond to the state's requirement recommendations for the effective development patterns on water demand. I'll just go through these, and of course you guys can bring forward any questions. But so we've called out use ERC-based water demand estimates when evaluating rezonings and general plan amendments, integrate water supply and level of service checks into development review, and encourage compact development patterns where appropriate to reduce irrigation needs. Now, this last one, which we've been trying to work on, which is that some sort of tool that your city can use in the future, where you can take in some different land use applications, maybe a rezone, and take a look at a tool that says, based on our projections, this is how much water that land use would use. And you could review that and say, well, you know, that might be too much water, might not be enough, kind of a thing. With the lack of data currently for that secondary water use, we don't necessarily feel comfortable in bringing something forward that will actually be useful. And we've been talking with the state about that, and they agree that this is a good spot to be at, where we say create a table based on land use types that estimates water needs for remaining developable land to be included in the next general plan update, specific to the water use and preservation element. And really, that's going to be an opportunity for the city to come back, review goals for what's going on with Kaysville and current water usages and projections. But at that time, there will hopefully be more data that a greater tool can actually be put together and put into the general plan. Next slide. So methods to reduce demand for future development: maintain and refine water efficient landscaping standards, require landscaping agreements for any development using culinary water outdoors, ensure coordination with Weber Basin and secondary providers during development review. New developments would keep culinary use at or below the 60 GPCD. Implementation of further waterwise landscaping regulations, i.e. potentially limiting turf in front and rear yards. Next slide. And then methods to reduce demand for existing development: expand turf removal and landscaping retrofits, grow participation in the My Meter portal, implement targeted outreach for high use accounts, reduce water loss by investing in line replacements and leak detection, maintain and reduce citywide GPCD, reduce annual non-revenue water by 2030, support full secondary metering across the city by 2030, which we've been talking about with your secondary providers, and then consider Kaysville Business Park landscape guidelines.
Will you remind me what GPCD stands for?
Yes, and Josh, you have to help me with this and make sure I get it right.
Gallons per capita day, so it's
Yes.
the number of gallons that each person would use.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And then for the city specifically, what the city can do to help minimize water usage or reduce it: convert more city parks and facilities to culinary irrigation to reduce system flushing, use AMI data to refine state structures to promote conservation, invest in high return conservation projects using the new 20,000 Parks Water Efficiency Fund, and reduce non-revenue water, i.e. leaks and flushing year over year. And then for the next slide, that's just kind of this is to kind of sum up. And Josh mentioned this before. Sorry, I'm going to do one more slide. There we go. So what the 2025 plan lays out and what we've linked to this chapter is in order to close that 2060 deficit, Josh has laid out the additional Weber Basin allocations and exchanges, development of city water rights and future wells, and a piece of that, although those are big portions, is the demand reduction and conservation efforts that have been laid out in those goals and recommendations. Next slide. And then just for the next step of all of this, and a big one is to check in again on that data. What we've been doing currently and then what the city will be doing moving forward is ongoing coordination with Weber Basin, the culinary provider, secondary irrigation companies, which is already happening, and the Utah Division of Water Resources and Utah Division of Drinking Water. And they've been along with us on this process as well. And then just routine updates. So reviewing your data, taking a look, seeing that everything still jives and makes sense with what Kaysville's usages are in the potential future, and then reassess the goals on a 5-year cycle. And then plan maintenance as required by the state. Update the element at least every 5 years. Big one for the next step is to incorporate new secondary metering data. Obviously, that would be after the 2030 implementation of meters deadline. And then reevaluate supply, demand, and conservation progress for each cycle. Next Next slide. And we did want to pull a clarification out of what you have in your packet. We did have a little bit of framework still left in there. So this would just be, as redlined, that Kaysville City will commit to consultation with those 4 different entities, and then removing that little portion because it is explained in the lower paragraph of your timing and updates. And then with that, we just kind of want to be available for questions, and we have Josh and Melinda for their technical expertise, and we're kind of here to help with process questions, and we're available. Oh, well, still open for questions, but next steps, really, we want to take your feedback tonight, see what you think, and update the chapter based on that, and then bring the amendment to City Council next week. And the goal is to be able to get this adopted by before year end. So, thank you.
There was one thing that kind of caught my eye. Did it say changing city parks to using culinary water instead of secondary?
Yeah, so in the water conservation plan, it sounds a little counterintuitive. One of our conservation efforts is we've converted 3 or 4 different city parks from using secondary irrigation water to culinary. The reason that we've done that is it assists greatly. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed in summer months in communities across the United States, but especially here in Kaysville, you'll see us opening up fire hydrants, and it looks like we're throwing water in the garbage. What that is doing is it's increasing circulation. We don't want water staying in pipes too long. That as the temperature in those pipes increases, you see an overall decrease in water quality, specifically with the chlorine residual in that water. So what we're doing is we're monitoring every day what are the chlorine residuals throughout town, and we'll go and strategically flush locations. Hey, the water's good right now, but let's just be extra cautious. We're going to flush out and replace that with newer water from the tanks. That takes staff time. That takes a little bit more water than going to a park, turning it to culinary, where a staff member isn't having to go out and open a hydrant. You can specify the amount of water that we're wanting to use and still get some circulation. And overall, it's a net reduction in the amount of flushing that's done. So getting the water quality benefits and an overall reduction in the amount of usage at those parks and through flushing. So.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I can see the logic there. That's great.
So Josh, just kind of bottom line, I guess. So I guess the plan is saying that in order to meet future water demand, once Kaysville is all built out, we're going to need some additional water, more than we currently have.
Yeah, between 100 and maybe 150 acre feet.
Yeah.
And usage could very well be less than that, but like I said, we've been trying to be conservative with that estimate so that we always have more water available than we need with actual usage.
And your plan now to get that extra water is, of course, conservation.
Correct.
Try to reduce the amount of water that's being used.
Mm-hmm.
Additional water from Weaver Basin. And Weaver Basin has capacity?
Weaver Basin has capacity beyond that 3,100 acre feet that we have access to. We can execute additional contracts from them. The newer contracts are a bit more expensive, and so we want to try and avoid getting into that higher tier of water as much as possible. So our hope is that through conservation and through, I'll call it cheaper water, through wells, that we'd be able to meet that future demand.
And that's the third part I was going to mention.
Correct.
You're looking at some wells then also
Exactly.
to supplement that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What's next is the public hearing. Are we ready for that? All right, so we'll open up the meeting to the public hearing portion on this agenda item. Anybody here from the public that would like to come up and address the commission, we welcome you.
While we're waiting for people to comment, I'll just let the commission know that we did not receive any phone calls or emails regarding the public hearing notice that we posted on this item.
Thank you.
I'm Val Starkey. I'm going to use a piece of paper because I'm more nervous these days. I appreciate hearing comments and the work that's been done. I'll tell you why. I've spent 4 years in Arizona, Las Vegas, and Tegucigalpa, Honduras, all of which have limited water resources. In Honduras, I was a missionary. We got to have showers every other day. And we were thankful. Oh, by the way, it was cold water. When I came home to a nice Sunday meal, after the meal, I helped clean up. On the table was a porcelain, gold-plated pitcher of water. And I took this and I said to my mother, "What do I do with this?" And she said, "You pour it down the drain." Those words were offensive to me. I had changed. I had a different respect for water. This plan has some positive things, using what we need and using what we have and future. But there's one thing that I think needs to be reemphasized. There's not enough emphasis on the biggest piece of the pie, the citizens, okay? My experience is the best way citizens participate is by getting them involved and encouraging ideas. Now, I know your assignments, okay? And I'm kind of not addressing the right people, but I am going to encourage that somebody in this city, whether it's the mayor, the council, the planning commission, or someone, organize a group of citizens who are genuinely interested in water conservation. My belief and trust in humanity is people will step up to the plate when they understand and they have a will and they're participating as a group, okay? So I think if we all work on this together, we can make more progress with conservation. Mm-hmm. It's been talked about a little bit, but I think there needs to be some kind of formal work in the city to help that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Hi, Jill Dredge, and last week we sat through the meeting with the City Council, and there were several of them that were kind of concerned about some of the information that was missing in the packets. And I think one question as a person sitting in the audience I have is the state is pushing this, but yet we don't have the information to necessarily meet the requirements. And I guess the question would be, is there a way to wait or adopt some of this until we do have the information to go ahead and commit to this plan?
Jill, what specifically are you meaning? We don't have the data, the information for what?
That's what was said last week in the City Council. I don't know because I don't have a packet, but several of the council people were a little concerned about saying that there was some information missing in the packets or that they weren't aware of. So that's my question.
And when you say the state is pushing us, what are you referring to there?
Isn't that we have to meet this requirement to have this plan by the end of the year?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Wasn't that what was, that's where I'm going. If this has to be met in a couple of weeks and we don't have the information, how do we go ahead and meet this when we really don't have the information?
I guess I'd turn to Melinda or to Ann and say what information were they were saying was missing.
I can address that when we close the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. portion of the meeting then. Would you give us an opportunity to maybe to address those questions that you had?
Yeah.
So, a couple things. One, I myself have thought several times, like, the timing on this is curious because a lot of these secondary water providers are not going to have data for a few more years. And I haven't asked the state this, but my thoughts are that waiting even longer to do it is going to put us even further behind. So my guess is that is why this came forward when it did. It was right after we had a very high drought year. And so the state legislature, I think in their wisdom, determined that implementing now is better than waiting until that data would exist. Now, there probably are some communities that have secondary water and have that data. I think that does exist. I know there are several communities, a lot of communities. I grew up in Orem. There was no secondary water. Murray, I believe, did not have any secondary water. So those communities would have everything that they would need with data in order to proceed. And so I think twofold is like delaying just gets us further behind, but also there are communities out there that would have better data than what we have. Specific to the council meeting last week, we did have a work session, which was somewhat of a repeat of the joint Planning Commission City Council meeting that we had a couple weeks ago. We did not have a draft ready to include in that City Council packet last week. So some of the concerns I think that were addressed was that they're really, like, this draft plan that was in the Planning Commission packet that was put out on Friday, the council did not have that. And so I think they were really trying to wrap their minds around like what this would look like, because that it just wasn't ready and it wasn't included in their packet. But the other part of that, right, is that there is data that's missing. But I think that speaks to the justifications that I mentioned earlier, that the state chose to not delay and to try and get these conservation and the long-term planning of how that impacts land use and development implemented now versus waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you raised exactly, well, I was sitting here after Josh had spoken and we were listening to some of the comment. I was sitting here thinking, well, Josh has been talking about the 20% of the water that the city controls. What about the other 80%? And we hadn't been talking very specifically about a lot of that. And I guess what you're saying is we don't have data from those secondary water providers. Why are they left out? And yeah, Christine, if you can address that afterwards.
Yeah, so that's I think the point that Jill raises is incredibly valid, and not to pick on the state, but it's unfortunately far from the first time that the state has taken the approach of ready, shoot, aim. Yeah. But I'm appreciative of the efforts that Melinda's been successful with of pushing back on the state. Like, we realize that a large part of this general plan element, you want data on secondary water, on irrigation, and despite the state pushing in meetings with us several times, like, yep, that's what we need from you. Maybe even some assumptions and some guesses, pushing back. We don't have it, and we're not comfortable with guesses and assumptions, and finally getting approval from the state to take the stance of we're going to focus on what we do have, and we're not going to include data that doesn't exist yet and that is not reliable. And the state appreciate them acknowledging that, like, okay, Kaysville can adopt a plan that is focused, as you look at the numbers and the data and the information, is focused on the information that we do have on indoor usage, with a commitment in the future that when that data comes available, Kaysville can modify their plan and pull in reliable, defensible information. So I think, as Jill pointed out, we don't want to be hamstrung by missing data, and I think the way that Melinda has structured this acknowledges the fact that data doesn't exist and provides a venue for that to be incorporated in the future.
So not to be alarmist.
Yeah.
But you're saying that the city, the part of the water that the city controls, we're planning for it, we're in good shape.
Correct.
If we continue to go forward with our planning and growth based on that assumption, and we don't know what the situation is with the secondary water, worst case scenario, we get future development and there ain't enough secondary water for them to do their landscaping or so on. I mean, I guess that's possible, right?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Certainly possible, and I think that's where it's, you know, the state is specifically requiring, we want close coordination between the different water providers.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's currently already happening in Kaysville. Development comes in, and part of that, you know, we recently had a west side development that's going through the initial phases of reviews and applications, and prior to any official public meeting, having some discussions between the different utility providers, irrigation, sewer, Kaysville City. You know, does anybody have any concerns with this potential proposal? You know, whether that's capacity issues, and I think a lot of that coordination already happens, and we are relying upon those partners who are in charge of and controlling those resources to kind of self-report to us that, hey, is this something that you guys are capable of doing? And there have been developments in Kaysville, whether it's official applications or just, hey, I'm kind of drawing something out on the back of this napkin. Is this possible? Where that coordination has resulted in what you're wanting to do is not going to work. And one specific property on the west side that for many, many years has sat undeveloped and for many additional years potentially could remain undeveloped because of the capacity concerns specifically with the irrigation provider.
Okay. Yeah, good point. Okay.
Yeah.
So Christine Richmond from GSBS Consulting. I just wanted to add a couple of comments, nuances to this question about the secondary water. One is that it was on the slide, and Melinda mentioned it, that they are going through the process of metering the individual connections and will eventually impose fee structures for the usage of that water. The recommendation in the general plan is to use this interim period as that process gets in place to do an education campaign with people about saving water through irrigation water, so that when they get the sticker shock of their metered utilization, the city has some policies and tools in place to help with that process. And that is also the reason that you brought up, Wilf, about, I'm sorry, Planning Commissioner Summercole. Knowing each other a while. Is that the reason there's a recommendation to work towards better data, not just to get the secondary utilization data, but also to dig in on the growth numbers, the developable acres. We've got some generalized numbers, but I think we want to dig in a little more detail on those to really see what those numbers look like, so that when the time comes when we have the good data, a planning tool can come together pretty efficiently for you, hopefully at the next 5 or 6 year review and update.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of work. I think we appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I think it looks to me like we're putting together a plan, and where we can't do that, we're planning to plan. You know, we're doing our best with what's available, and
You guys are the planning commission.
yeah, it's an ongoing process, right? Not a past tense.
Chairman Packer, I just want to say that I've been toiling around with the city on various committees for about 6 years now, starting in January. And I trust Josh 100% with whatever he brings to the city. And I know he will do whatever's necessary for the city and bring us the numbers. And when I read the appendix for what the state wants to add to the general plan, all I saw was a bunch of approximations. And so I think that gives Josh and GSP the chance to look at that data in the next couple of years and really put a solid plan together for us in Kaysville, the residents and the city of Kaysville. And again, I don't know if anybody has said this in the past, but Josh is the man. And I think that's...
My mom says that.
And that is now on public record.
Oh, so I feel silly sometimes, but the thing is that the first time I met him, he was so assured of everything he said, and he's always assured, and I trust him with city business and what he does for the city. So, and I just wanted to say that. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you.
So we did send on Tuesday the draft that we updated your packet with on Tuesday. We sent that to the state. We have confirmed from them that they believe this meets state code. And so when this is adopted, we should be in good shape with compliance with state code. I was able, now, oftentimes the state puts forward these requirements and never provides any type of funding opportunity for the city. So the good news, at least in this instance, is that they did provide some grant money. I applied for and received a grant of $15,000. So as long as we get this adopted by the end of the year, and now the state has deemed that we are in compliance with the requirements, we should be able to have our expenses for the consultant with GSBS, and also we consulted with Sunrise Engineering to do some of the water data number crunching, and we should be able to receive that reimbursement of up to $15,000. So with that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to the City Council that they adopt approve a resolution that would amend the 2022 plan to adopt. What we will do with this is just add Chapter 6 and put this at the end of the plan. Obviously, we'd like the Planning Commission to continue on in any discussion, and I can pull up the plan if you would like me to kind of scroll through that, or if there's any changes you'd like to see, we're happy to let that discussion come forward from the Commission.
Mr. Chair, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to make a motion.
I'm ready to take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion then that we recommend to the City Council adoption of this draft plan for the water element for the general plan. Given the basis that that we don't have maybe all of the solid data that we need, but the review by the state has said that we would be in compliance with the state requirements, and with the understanding that we will continue to pursue to get that additional information for the secondary water so that we have a more solid plan than what we would currently have. So with that, I would recommend that we make the motion to recommend that approval to the City Council.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Okay, we'll go ahead and start the voting out here with Commissioner Moore.
Yay.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Motion passes. We will send that on to the City Council.
Yeah, and we are going to turn this around and get it on the City Council agenda for next Thursday, and hopefully they'll have the same comfort level or a better comfort level after having the Planning Commission's eyes and recommendation on that tonight, and hopefully they'll be able to approve that next Thursday.
All right. Approval of the minutes from the November 13th, 2025 meeting.
I wasn't able to attend that meeting, so I'd be able to abstain.
All right, I think that means we will not have enough votes to make that happen, so we'll have to push that back to another agenda. Is that correct? Okay.
Can we vote on it without 4? I was there, but I wasn't up here. I did listen to the meeting.
Yeah, I think you're good. All right.
Do we need a
Well, yeah, we need a motion to approve, I guess.
put a motion forward to approve the meetings, the minutes of the November 13th, 2025 meeting?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, good. Other matters that come before the Planning Commission?
Well, also on the agenda for next Thursday's council meeting will be to move Commissioner Moore from an alternate planning commissioner to a regular planning commissioner. Planning Commissioner Paul Allred has resigned, so Commissioner Moore would fill the remainder of Mr. Allred's term, which expires in June of next year, and then we would look to do reappointments at that point in time. So I'll need to get with the mayor and see what she would like to do to then fill the vacancy that would be created from moving Commissioner Moore up to the permanent or the regular member. Other than that, this would be the last meeting for the year, unless anyone wants to come on Christmas and find locked doors. No, so we appreciate the service that you all provide to the community, and really just are, also appreciative of just what a great community we live in. I'll turn some time over to Mindy to maybe give a brief update on Kaysville Gives, but we will have, we are looking also ahead to some agenda items. There is the potential the symphony or some version of a symphony rezone may come back to the commission in January. They're still kind of sorting out some of the concerns and issues over there, and I think that's kind of it. Although we are looking to do some rezones for city-owned property, like we have some parks that are not zoned to public use, and so we kind of want to be strategic about selecting an agenda that we might not have much on and bring those forward. Our assumption is that wouldn't bring too much public comment, since all we're doing really is just rezoning those properties to an appropriate zone. I think some of them actually are zoned residential, and that when we do our long-term planning, that could actually throw off some of our numbers when we crunch data, and so we want to try and rectify some of the kind of weird rezones or weird zones that we have out there. And then thanks to Katie Ellis, who's been able to put some time in on looking at some of the text amendments we want to bring forward. Our LUPA, there's a couple others that she's been working on, so we will look to get those public hearing notices posted. Again, trying to work around some of the, like if we have big rezones, we don't want to crowd an agenda, but we'll be bringing forward some text amendments and rezones that benefit the city here in the next couple of months.
Cool. Well, I don't know what you guys are doing tomorrow, but I think we'll be down there starting at 10 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to all, Kaysville Gives is wrapping up its week of collecting almost 2,000 gifts for over 150 families, I think was what we've added up, about 550 children this year. We've received a lot of donations from the public. We've also received financial donations, which have been super helpful. But if you have any time tomorrow between 10 and 6, down at Young Truck and Trailer, just right before you go over the freeway, which would be 200 North, 650 West, come down and just take a look at everything that your community has brought for Kaysville Gives. I know Mr. Belknap super loves Kaysville City, but I'd have to second it and maybe raise it. Well, I don't know. I think you've got it like up there on a pedestal, but I love being a part of Kaysville Gives. It's you get to see the finest in people, and anytime that you feel that you are amongst people that maybe aren't, that you struggle with people or you don't see the best in them, this is one thing that helps redeem any of that for me each year. I'll just share this really quick with you guys. My little niece went through her neighborhood selling gingerbread cookies, ginger people cookies. And she made over $500 for these cookies. Now, obviously, she didn't make, she's 11 years old. She didn't make $500 worth of cookies, but the neighbors were super, super generous in that donation to her. And then she was able to come and do shopping with us at Target as one of our city events that we do each year. And it was really sweet to see this young little girl at 11 years old get her little heart filled with joy and happiness as she is seeing that there's a bigger picture in your community of ways to help and reach out. And just as an 11-year-old, there's things that you can do. And that redeems humanity every year for me. And I will say there's a bigger picture. Today, as we were going through gifts, gift cards came in that we weren't expecting that are filling a need that we weren't planning on. And so as you, if you have any extra time tomorrow, I would love it. Would love to give you a tour around and show you what we do down there. But it's been a great pleasure for me to be a part of Kaysville Gives and see what an amazing community we live in. I wasn't going to cry. I thought I had this all together. But anyway, I love Kaysville. I love the people that live here. The people are really good.
I'm hijacking the microphone, so I apologize, but I try to say this without hyperbole, but Kaysville Gives, in my opinion, if not is one of the most important and impactful things that the city sees happen on an annual basis. So grateful for that, and I'm grateful to work for the city, and Kaysville Gives makes me love the city that I get to work for and work in, and the city that I live in. It's so special, and you don't know that until you get to participate and see Mindy do what she does, and the amazing people that she gets to work with, and even getting to drop things off and better understand the impact that this has on people's lives. It's amazing.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's the beauty of this program is that Kaysville Gives allows city council members to get involved. It allows our youth city council to get involved. Our staff here at the city get involved. Residents are getting involved. Our businesses are involved. Our residents are super involved. So when you look on a whole of an outreach program, it's marking all the boxes. And I don't want to say we're like checking the boxes, right? But there's something in it for everyone. Those that are receiving within our community, all of the elementary schools, we're helping Willow Pines, the trailer park this year. We've got 29 families that we've reached out to there. So it is a full-fledged community effort to pull this off. So.
Yeah, and I think Josh sat down, but one of the coolest things is after everything is all boxed up, and on that Monday morning following those deadlines, our generally speaking, right, our staff that are strong in stature go down and load up those boxes. So that's our power department, our public works, and some of our recreation staff. They put those boxes on trailers and they go deliver them. And so it is full circle that each of us is getting involved. And I last week walked into Target to participate and I walked in those doors and I just was overcome with some of the emotions that both Mindy and Josh just expressed. Like, this is such a wonderful thing, and it's been great to be a part of it for as long as I've been with the city, and the fact that we do have everyone involved in an opportunity really for everyone to participate. So even if a city staff member maybe couldn't financially contribute they have an opportunity to come and make a difference anyway. And we've also in the past provided Christmas gifts for some of our own staff and our, and their families that have had needs as well. And so it really has been a very well thought out, and just as Mindy said, it allows everyone in the community to be able to participate. So good job, Kaysville.
Love it. That's great. All right. I guess we're done for the year then. Seeing that nothing else on the agenda, so this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Well, we wish you all a Merry Christmas.
You guys
You too.